Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 1 finale, or even finale, for Please Put Them On Takamine-san. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, finale, season finale, that can change title-wise. We'll talk about that more at the end, but just jumping into the episode, obviously it focuses on the Cinderella play. And I think it's kind of an interesting detail that obviously the whole point of having Koshi on stage, I mean, the real reason is you want him to be more confident in himself, and you kind of want to have this fun moment because it's less about her, even though she'll say it's about her, but it kind of is about her because Takamine wants to involve Koshi in this thing because, as she said last episode, this might be the last time being able to kind of do something for the cultural festival because they'll be busy prepping for like college entrance exams and stuff like that. So they won't have time to really do something. So this is kind of like their last hurrah in high school to do something like this. So she wants to make this memorable, especially because this school year has been the first year her and Koshi have gotten close to each other since they were kids, even though he's completely unaware of it. So yes, it's kind of for herself, but it is also for like spending time with Koshi. So, but a thing I was about to say, it's like obviously she uses it as the guise of, hey, I want you to be my closet in case so my performance is perfect. Funny enough, she never has to rewind time for herself. She has to do it for Koshi, which is once again kind of in a way kind of for herself, but it's never for the purpose of that didn't get done right, so I'm gonna rewind time. The only time she ever rewound time was for Koshi's sake, which I think kind of speaks volumes. That once again, it's like, I mean, maybe it's just because, hey, she was so perfect through and through, so there was no hiccups. Or it could also be like, right, I'm perfectly fine with things not being 100% perfect. I did it good enough. I did it nearly perfect enough that I'm not going to get too caught up in it. I will only rewind because I don't want to like mess up the flow of what's going on here. So that's my takeaway from it. I just thought it was an interesting thing, like sitting here thinking back on the episode. I was like, yeah, she never we've only saw her rewind time 2 times in the episode, and 1 time was for Koshi, but it was never like, oh, she did it for her own performance, and she never did that. So just thought that was kind of an interesting detail, like I said, to correlate with that being her reason to Koshi why she needs him nearby on stage and stuff, versus once again her real reason is just wanting to use this in an exercise to put Koshi out there, give him more self-confidence, but also she wants to do something big in this situation with him. But yeah, anyway, getting into the play itself, Koshi is a nervous wreck because, lucky for him, he's like, the prince doesn't have many lines. All I have to do is get that right. And so he's practicing his lines, whereas everyone else is just magnetically connected to Takamine on stage. I love that Eddie and her girlfriend are there, and obviously she's cheering like an idiot. And her girlfriend's like, oh, could you stop it? You're so embarrassing. Especially when that tea or whatever gets spilled on Takamine and her bra shows, and all the guys are like, oh my god, and like they're reacting that way, and so is Eri, and all of them talking about, oh my god, that evil stepmother, and it's just like, oh, here you are, you're just as much of a horn dog as the rest of these dudes here. But yeah, like the play goes on, and obviously she has her singing moments. She does beautifully, and then the time comes for Koshi's part of like the play when Prince first shows up because of the ball. But the problem is his nerves get the best of him, which I feel bad for Koshi because it is kind of like, Takamine's got that archetype of like, she's got that Ojo-sama thing of just like she kind of pushes her will upon you, which is very like, but it's a cliche and stereotype in anime of just like that type of bossy character pushing their will onto like a male protagonist or whatever. Because it's like, yeah, you kind of dumped all this on him. He had to learn the lines pretty quickly. He literally had hours of preparation versus like the week buildup. It is kind of unfair and unreasonable, which she can be unreasonable at times, but she has somewhat good, but also still selfish reasonings for her unreasonableness, but still. And, but yeah, Koshi got stage fright because like he looked out to the crowd and it like, he got stunned by it all. And so Takamine pushes him over and basically uses him like a stool and takes off her underwear, rewinds time. And, and confronts Coach. She's like, whoa, what were you doing? The fact of the matter is, no one's here to see you and your piss poor performance. Basically, you're like a smear on the backdrop. He's like, Jesus, I thought you said you were going to give me advice and this is it. She's just like, basically, don't look at anyone else. I'm in front of you. Look at me and focus on me and let that be it. Because she's like, do not ruin this for me. But Koshi is able to see through, as he says, everything she says sometimes has thorns to it, but he understands the nicety underneath it. That he's like, right, you're being harsh, but I know you're doing it for nice reasons because you're just trying to get me to not be in my own head. Don't look to the crowd. Look at me. Focus on me. That's all you need to do. And he does it. And for him, he even says, it's not till later on I realized I was able to say those lines so easily because I wasn't acting. I was saying what I was feeling, but I only had that in retrospect. Now in the future, looking back, being like, oh, that's what I was feeling in that moment. And him saying it so effortlessly, like he was acting, but the genuineness of it, Takamine really liked it. So now the next section is, all right, we'll go to black, lights off. Takamine sings her song and then we do the dance number. But then the problem is, hey, I still need my underwear put back on, which you thought she would have had him do that when she was, but it's like, right, she had to dedicate like that little split bit of time to like, hey, get his mind and focus to get his lines right and don't freeze on stage. So now it's like, okay, you're under my dress now while I'm doing my singing performance. You have to put my underwear on. So he's struggling to do that. So she's moving along the stage and he has to keep up with her twists, her turns. I was like, once again, super unreasonable, but luckily he was able to do it. Luckily it cuts to black and he's able to get from underneath the dress. No one noticed. And because, hey, I literally did one of the most nerve-wracking things, putting her underwear on while we were on stage in front of so many people without getting caught. It's cool. The rest of the play goes perfectly. You get to the climax of it, which for her, it's like, oh, you've got plenty of practice of putting stuff on me, so it is very befitting. Once again, brought this up last episode. I never thought about the Cinderella parallels until they kind of made it, until she brought up her perspective on the play and her issues with the story of Cinderella. But either way, it's about to be that moment. And then Seiya has to come in and ruin everything. He's like, stop. That's an imposter prince. I'm like, what are you doing, you jerk off? What are you doing? And it's like, I was like, did you not want to miss your chance to shine in the light? But it's like, no, it's specifically the fact is that he's playing like, he's adding this little twist to the story because he's like, oh, don't let that filthy person comment or touch you. Look at my hands. I put on tons and tons of hand cream because he's a pervert trying to touch her feet. And it's like, oh, that's what this is all about. And now it's like, well, what do we do? And then it's just like the guy, like one of the stage people being like, yo, just improvise. Seiya's like, he's unhinged. He's going crazy. So just like go with the flow. And Takamine, like, you know, is a professional and immediately keeps going with it. But Koshi's takeaway from it was like, this selfish prick. This is so important to Takamine, and this bastard just basically made it about him wanting to touch her feet. He's ruining this good moment for her. And so Takamine was going to take the place somewhere else, but then Koshi was like, no, like, I won't let you, like, let your selfishness, like, take away from her. Like, I might just be a commoner and you might be the real prince, but at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to make her happy. And obviously that meant the world to Takamine, and it felt real and powerful. And in that moment, I think Koshi was speaking in his heart, but it's also just like his heart like spoke faster than his brain could talk. So he was listening to his heart instead of his head in that moment. And it's like, right, it's up to see, you know, what is Takamine gonna do? And she kisses Koshi. Granted, she tells everyone else later on, like, nothing actually happened, but I think from Koshi's perspective, like, they did actually kiss. And I'm going to assume it's both of their first kisses. They didn't really talk about it, but I'm just going to assume it was. And then she proceeded to run away with him off the stage, and it's such a great performance. And apparently that was just like the afternoon, that was like the early showing. They are going to do like a repeat evening or afternoon one. And they even one of the stage people was talking like, oh my God, Seiya, we should do that again. And it's like, yeah, because his selfishness got the best of him. So they have to redo that again later. So I would assume like the second performance went off perfectly fine as well. But yeah, very, very cute wrap up. And so, you know, the festival went off without a hitch, and their Cinderella performance ended up being a massive success because of that nice little twist, was well received by everyone. So, I also appreciate Eri she was first like denouncing like Seiya as the prince because it's like, oh, who cares? That guy sucks. He's not as cool as Koshi. Obviously, like she's a big Koshi and Takamine like fan anyway. So it's beautiful. Once again, her girlfriend just being like, shut up, stop embarrassing me. A little detail I think is just kind of interesting for this episode. I figured I should also bring it up. Everyone that was on stage in this episode had detailed faces. Like, once again, everyone's eyes are usually blacked out, like when it comes to like, or blanked out or never like animated at all for just regular background characters. Anyone that's not a main character doesn't have like a detailed face. So it's interesting that everyone on stage, I guess to like add to the emotion of the play, like they were given something for that. So I thought that was kind of a neat little thing in comparison to, okay, we never really had that so far in the anime. So I thought that was just kind of a neat little detail. I was like, I kept noticing. I was like, oh, that's fascinating. So yeah. Also, the only other time you saw people in the crowd with eyes, aside from Eri and her significant other, were when Koshi was staring at him when everyone's eyes, like that's the point, to be able to see everyone's eyes staring at him and his nervousness. So there's actually something really interesting I didn't think about until after the fact, that it ties back into the conversation from last episode, was the whole, you know, one of Takamine's issues was like the passiveness in that storyline of like, hey, waiting for like something to happen instead of being a little more proactive. And I think that's supposed to be the interesting thing of, well, obviously, once again, this whole thing is her being a little more proactive and putting Koshi in a position and stuff like that. But I think there is also an element of she did kind of wait, and it was Koshi that was a little more proactive in this case. And instead of, I mean, even though she was the one nudging him to be a little more proactive, she was trying to be proactive in her own way, and that ended up making him more proactive. So like, there's a layered thing and layered way you could look at this, where it's like, was she kind of passively waiting for him to kind of make a move, and he kind of did. But you could also make the argument her going out of her way to kiss him was her making a more aggressive concerted effort versus being bad. So it's like there's an interesting dynamic, dichotomy there, if you really like think about it, like how layered that whole situation can be in a grand context, and in conjunction with like her perspective on the Cinderella story as a whole that she discussed last episode. It's just an interesting thing that was floating through my mind after the fact that I wanted to kind of include in the conversation. But in the aftermath of the festival, you know, Koshi's trying to figure out why Takamine did that. Because in his head, it's like, you know, maybe she did that just as a reward. But he's like, would she really do that? He's like, and the only other reason why she would do that would be, he's like, no, but that can't be. And so she's like, oh, is something going on? He's just like, yeah, about that whole thing. She's like, oh, so did you figure out what it was? Why I did that? And he is like, I don't. She's like, yeah, like, do I need to do it over and over again until you figure it out? Because she's like, if you don't figure it out and you get an answer wrong, I can rewind time and make it so that the play did not go so smoothly, you know? I was like, would she really go through that? And would she rewind time? I'm like, is she actually going to do that? But she doesn't. But yeah, she kind of flicks him on the head and is like, oh, like, tell me, like, what is the answer? And he's like, you were rewarding me for basically doing a good job as your closet, and you want me to continue being your closet in university. And that's what this is kind of about. And then she just immediately rewinds time, and he could tell she's a little annoyed. But basically her end result is what we were going to do anyway. Like, it makes you wonder, because she says basically, because you got it wrong, you're just going to have to continue being my closet up in university until you figure it all out. And it's like, well, was that not going to be the plan, or were you going to change things if he actually got the answer right? Because he is very dense and he's oblivious. And once again, he doesn't remember the fact is that he knows you. He doesn't put it together that, hey, that girl I met all those years ago was Takamine. And it just, you know, he's oblivious to that. Eri knows the truth, but, you know, on both fronts of, hey, you were around when me and, like, you, me, and Koshi all hung out together when we were younger. He might not remember. And also she knows, like, hey, I know you're super into him and stuff like that. So Eri knows the truth, and Koshi just continues to be, you know, your typical oblivious protagonist. And even Koshi's like, right, it will take me some time in the future before I do find out the answer to that. So he puts her underwear on. It's like, because yeah, you still have to do that, and it's like, all right, let's go. So obviously there is way more story left to tell in that regard. So but a nice little sweet wrap up of like, well, not everything's resolved, but obviously we're taking a step forward. Little by little, we're progressing the relationship. So this is where I come into the whole conversation of, well, is this a season finale or finale? Well, there has been no confirmation on a season 2. It hasn't been confirmed that this is a one and done, but it kind of feels like when you don't get an immediate confirmation, it does feel like, oh, it might just be a thing of, this might just be a one and done. Who knows what the future may hold, but the manga is still ongoing at the time of me recording this. It's currently 10 published volumes. I was looking up, only 9 have been translated, so volume 10 hasn't been translated, but it's a monthly release. It's not, so that's why like there's not like a lot of the manga out. But I was also Googling to see how much of the manga this covered, and I didn't get like a definitive like, oh, this covers the first blah blah amount of chapters or volumes. So that's unclear. One close enough like answer I got was it covers like the beginning of the manga, but apparently there is like in traditional sense like stuff is condensed. There was stuff that was cut out. Apparently there are differences. I don't know how true this is, but I was seeing this was just a Google result. Not necessarily anyone said this, or maybe it's just Google AI pulling from something someone said. But apparently, the ending to this episode is not how that plays out, because there is stuff that is straight up changed. So the only way to get a definitive answer is to read the manga. So if it is a situation of, if I want to know the story's continuation and conclusion, I'd have to, first and foremost, I'd probably have to start the manga from the beginning, just because there are differences, because things weren't just changed, there is some stuff moved around as well. So yeah, I'm curious like how much of the manga this did cover up and what those exact changes are. But you know, what the thing I was reading, like I said, it's just a Google result. There was no like, this is people discussing it. That's usually how I stumble across some of that stuff. But maybe there were other results. I just, like I said, I did a quick Google. I didn't really like heavily research. So there might be answers out there. Because I'm also getting into this episode a couple days late, because I think the episode came out like Wednesday. I didn't realize they were putting out these episodes back to back. Like the show's release schedule has been a little weird, because there's been weeks where it didn't air, and then like it moves to the next week, but it's like sometimes on Wednesday with the beginning after the end and other stuff, and then other days like this week it was on a Tuesday, but then like this episode dropped on Wednesday like the 18th. So yeah, it's a whole thing. So but yeah, that's where things currently stand. I'm very curious to see where the story goes. Like I said, whether it is in the form of the anime or whether I just like pick up the manga and, you know, pick it up from there. But I'm curious to see what other crazy adventures we go on. And I'd also, you know, get to see if there's any other characters other than like once again, we got the tiniest bit with Seiya, and we saw how crazy that guy is, you know, kind of a potential love rival, even though like technically Koshi would have 2 technical rivals, considering like Eri likes Takane too, because like, oh, you're like my type, but it's like, well, she already has a girlfriend, so that's kind of a moot point. But that probably leads to shenanigans, like I guessed in a previous episode. Like that has story potential for future shenanigans. But yeah, I'm curious to see what other characters get introduced as the series progresses too. And like I said, just the changes between the manga and the anime. So yeah. But yeah, I've kind of run my mouth off long enough. If this is all we get of the anime, it's been a fun ride. It was kind of a nice introduction to the story, considering I've never read the manga, so this is my first time getting to experience this story, and it's a wild story, and I'm really, like I said, interested to see what the future holds. But to the animators, writers, or directors who were a part of the anime, if this is all we get, thank you for what you're doing, and I'm excited to like I said, eventually, you know, check things out, maybe manga-wise, to kind of see where the story goes, or continues to go. But yeah, I've run my mouth off long enough. That's really all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.